So what is architecture?
So for me, architecture is I think is not only about buildings, but for me it's important to enlarge it to more the built environment. So it can be buildings, it can be landscape, public space, territories, objects. In a way, it's the artificially built environment we live in. That would be like, in a way, my definition, which also has an impact somehow on the way we look at the practice. Um, Not only focusing on buildings, but I think somehow if you consider that architecture is about the built environment, there is de facto a political and societal aspect of it.
So what can architecture do?
I think architecture is really a tool and can be used in all kinds of ways. Can be used to represent a totalitarian regime, can be used for creating social connections, for expressing neoliberal ideas. um, for me, it's important that as architects we really understand that we have a certain responsibility using that tool, and that we are the ones who kind of understand its language.
So what is your architectural position?
Um, it's not 100% clear for me, but there are some elements that I think are important. For example, concerning programs, there's always the question of until where is your ethical boundary? Are you ready to build for a big real estate developer? Are you willing to build for a country that doesn't respect human rights? Are you willing to build office spaces by the highway or and so on? We haven't had the chance to be confronted to all of the different types of client and program yet as a young practice, but I feel really comfortable with working on public space and on housing, because somehow there is a certain comfort that there is really an outcome in the use, which is something that we must probably have a positive outcome in a way. Um, I'm always wondering, would I accept to do, for example, a building for a big pharmaceutical company? And it's a bit tricky. I mean, of course, there is a financial situation and attractivity of having a new project, but I think it's important to be able to question ourselves, and to also redefine that ethical boundary.
So what is your design method?
We're actually quite special in our design method because we are a nomadic studio. I don't know a lot of other studios that work like this. We're 10, 12 people, and we have people in 7 countries and 2 continents on different time zones. And internally, at the moment, we don't have any office space. Everybody has their laptop, and we can work from wherever we want. And so we have worked very hard to try to install a digital system that would work for architects. So we use several key programs like Slack and Drive and Miro board, which for those who know is a giant online board where you can basically do anything. It's like an infinite board. And we have this giant board online where we have all the projects, we have the portfolio in progress, we have the website comments, we have the planning on the short term on the weekly level, we have the planning on the yearly level, we have examples of different kind of files for different types of phases of the project, and we are always on Miro. And somehow there was a lot of suspicion from colleagues of mine about this way of working. They were quite anchored in the idea of having a physical studio, doing models, having, a meeting room, and even within the team that we have now, so a lot of people, when we workshop together and try to think, is this really working? And people think that it's really working. Actually, you can really work online. the cool thing behind that is also that we can work from wherever we want. And when I said that, it might sound banal now with the post-COVID situation, but we've started to do that before the COVID. So when COVID happened, nothing changed. Literally nothing changed in the way we worked together in the studio. That's more about the methodology of working together, but about the design process somehow. For me, what is really important is to understand constraints. I mean, as an architect, if you have no constraint, you have no project. If you don't know where is the south, what kind of weather it is, what's the material available, then you really can't build anything. And you can see it in certain places in the world when it's lacking constraints, usually the architecture becomes pretty bad. So framing the constraint for us is super important, and then it enables us to really focus on what is essential. This is the playground we can work within for this project. And we like to experiment with different scenarios. We usually like to challenge the clients with radical and opposite propositions. And we don't consider them as a proposal A or proposal B. We just consider them as a tool to workshop with them. Like, we have a lot of private clients, so when we do that, we really make them feel like proactive within the process. And they decided also to do this and to do that. Yeah.
And what is the future of architecture?
Interesting question. It's a surprise question also. Somehow I feel like there will always be a need for architecture, but there's also, and I'm talking especially for the European context, like everything is already built somehow today. So now in my 15 years of practice, either within the studio or working for other companies, I've never worked on a like just an empty land where we start from scratch. We always worked with existing conditions. I think there is a bit of a question like, can artificial intelligence give smarter answers than humans concerning working in a complex built environment, considering the political, the societal, the philosophical, the budget and all that all together. Somehow I feel like it might never happen to be totally with artificial intelligence. But maybe it's just me who's being too optimistic. Maybe the job will just disappear. And then on the other part, like, how can architects be active in the digital world, and maybe we start designing buildings in the metaverse one day, because there will be no more office space, physical office space. 95% of office spaces will be in the metaverse, and then you can design office spaces. But then suddenly the constraints are also totally different. So yeah, let's see. There's these two different directions, I think, that really might have a really strong impact on the future of architecture. And then the third one, I think, is the question of materials. Today we have a huge material crisis. We can't follow budgets. There is way too much demand. And somehow we live in a high-tech society for certain things, but if we look at the way we build today, it's very similar to half a century ago. It's the same kind of brick, wood, metal, stone, concrete. I feel like there might be soon a revolution with a new material, just like there was with concrete around 80, 100 years ago. And this really might affect the way we build. And also, if this material is something that can be self-built, it will also transform totally the construction aspect. I think that there are these three elements that can really change the future of architecture. Not really clear how or when and how they interfere with each other, but somehow you can feel that there's a potential huge change in the way we work and the future of architecture.